Hi guys, welcome to the Pet Travel Guy podcast. This episode we're going to talk about UK imports, the requirements for bringing your pets in, focusing on the pet travel scheme, so it's cats, dogs and ferrets, what the requirements are depending on where you come from, whether your country is approved or not approved, what the difference is between a commercial arrival and a non-commercial arrival, because that's quite subtle and there are cost implications and paperwork implications. I'll outline which airports in the UK you can fly your pet into at the moment. There are only 5. We'll talk a little bit about the difference if you're lucky enough to come in on a private jet, and we'll outline the paperwork that's required in the various steps. And at the end we'll talk a little bit about the VAT, because we get lots of queries about who needs to pay VAT and who is exempt. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Key thing for this podcast is that we're focusing on animals that are flying in. If your pet is flying in, then it comes in as manifest cargo. So it comes in as freight, if you like. Now, it's not like in the movies where the crate is wedged in amongst the suitcases. It's a segregated area. It's just the pets in there. So please don't worry about that. So coming into the UK as manifest cargo, your pet has to go through the full arrivals process. Now that's not only the pet travel scheme checks, but it's also the customs entry and clearance. Depending where you live, where your pet's journey starts, the country can be approved or not approved. If it's not an approved country, the requirements are a little bit more in depth. But we'll start with the approved countries first. I'm not going to list them today because it'd take me too long. If you'd like to know whether it's an approved country or not, please get in touch and we'll tell you whether you are or not. So if you're coming from an approved country, the requirements are very simple. And I should say that as long as you adhere to these requirements and use the right products in the right time frame in the right order, then your pet should not need to go into quarantine on arrival in the UK. So coming from an approved country, the first step, as always, is a microchip. Can't stress enough how important it is to get the microchip in first. Make sure that your vet scans it when it's inserted to make sure it's working, and that they scan it on every visit to the vet so that they record that they've scanned it, checked it, and that treatment, vaccine, test, whatever, has been carried out with that pet under that microchip number. So microchip, then it's a rabies vaccine. They can be done on the same day, but please ensure that the vet writes that the chip was inserted before they vaccinated your pet. So from an approved country, rabies vaccine is done, and then you wait 21 days and your pet can come into the country. That's it for cats. For dogs, there's one more step. So a dog has to have a tapeworm treatment less than 5 days and more than 24 hours before arrival into the UK. And that treatment must contain praziquantel. So like I say, less than 5 days, but more than 24 hours. If it's less than 24 hours when it arrives in the UK, it will be held at the animal facility at the airport until that 24 hours is up. But as I say, it can't be any more than 5 days. So that's quite important, and it must contain praziquantel. So that's quite simple. That's an approved country. And there are lots of them, so please get in touch and we'll let you know whether your country is approved or not. If you're coming from an unapproved country, then the steps are very similar. Again, microchip, can't stress how important. Rabies vaccine after the microchip. But then you wait minimum of 30 days to do a rabies blood test. And then it's a minimum of 3 months from the date of the blood test to when your pet arrives in the UK. Again, for cats, that's it. Again, for dogs, they need the tapeworm treatment containing praziquantel less than 5 days before arrival, but more than 24 hours before arrival. So they're the basic requirements to come in, whether it's an approved or unapproved country. And as I say, as long as you comply with those requirements and everything's done in the right order, with the right products, etc., you'll be fine. I should highlight that not all rabies vaccines are equal. And whilst many vets will tell you that as soon as your pet is vaccinated against rabies, it's covered for 3 years, most vaccines are not actually valid for 3 years from initial vaccination. So please ask your vet to check the manufacturer's data sheet for that vaccine. And most will actually say valid for 3 years if boosted. So what we'd always recommend is that you, when you've had your pet treated for rabies, vaccinated against rabies, I should say, do a booster within the first 12 months. That should then give you a validity for 3 years without a further booster. If in doubt, again, send us a vaccine card and we'll check it for you and help with the whole arrival process, customs clearance and delivery anywhere in the UK. So make sure that rabies is valid. You know, if you've had it and it was 13 months ago, the chances are that it will not be valid. So you may have to start the process again, and we don't want to do that for the sake of a simple booster vaccine. The next thing to consider is whether you're traveling with your pet or not. Now, the definition of commercial is that you're not arriving within 5 days. So therefore, non-commercial is that you are traveling with your pet. So if you land in the UK on day 1 and your pet arrives on day 5 of whatever month, then that's fine. That's a non-commercial move. It's an EU definition that we've kept post-Brexit, and nobody really understands where the 5 days came from, but that's the definition. So if your pet and you are traveling within 5 days of each other, it's non-commercial, and your pet will be checked on arrival, go through the pet travel scheme checks with the animal handlers at the various animal reception facilities around the UK. If you and your pet are arriving more than 5 days apart, then your pet will be checked by the IPATA, the Animal and Plant Health Agency vets in the UK. There's an added expense for this because they charge for their vets to do that. If it's out of hours or at weekends, bank holidays, then it becomes seriously expensive. So please think about that when you're scheduling your flights into your pet's flights into the UK. The paperwork is very similar, slightly different format, but the requirements are exactly the same. So the boxes are all effectively the same. In terms of documentation, you now need a GB health certificate, and there are 2 versions. There's the non-commercial and the commercial. As I say, very similar, just slightly different layout, but the requirements are exactly the same, whether you've come from an approved or an unapproved country. If you're travelling in from Europe and have a pet passport, that's still a viable option. As I mentioned on a previous podcast, the UK government is in negotiation with the EU about Britain or the UK re-entering the EU pet passport scheme. We have no more details yet. We have no time frame or anything else, but it's on the cards. So we all look forward to that. If you do arrive on a pet passport, please let me reiterate that if a UK vet currently makes any entry into that EU pet passport, it will void the passport because we are currently not in the scheme. So just be aware. We'll need a copy of your vaccination card detailing when the various treatments were done, vaccines, parasite treatments, etc. Microchip certificate, if possible. And if you're coming from an unapproved country, then we will obviously need copies of the rabies blood tests with all the dates. Remember, it's got to be more than 3 months after the date of the blood test. The blood test must be done more than 30 days after the vaccine. And if it's non-commercial, we will need a copy of your e-ticket to prove that you are arriving into the UK within 5 days of your pet. You don't have to be arriving at the same airport, just into the UK. So that's the documentation. Again, if you need any advice, then please get in touch. So the airports in the UK that you can use, currently London Heathrow has 2 border inspection posts for pets coming in. Gatwick has 1. There is a second one that has been issued a licence, but it's not operating yet. Manchester has a border inspection post, but it can only accept non-commercial arrivals in Manchester. There isn't an APHA team that can get to the airport to do any arrival checks. So it's only non-commercial into Manchester. And the last 2 are Glasgow and Edinburgh. So there's the 5. Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester, Glasgow and Edinburgh, remembering that Manchester cannot accept commercial arrivals. For private jets, if you're lucky enough to have that option and you bring your pet into the UK on a private jet and you're going into another airport, not one of those 5, then arrangements have to be made with I believe it's the Heathrow Animal Reception Centre team who have regulatory authority and APHA for their vets to come out and meet you when you land at whatever airport it is and to do the pet travel scheme checks before your pet is allowed off the aircraft. your pet cannot set foot on British soil until those checks have been done. So whilst they're not in the cargo hold, they'll be in cabin with you, the entry requirements are still the same, and you have to have the checks done before you get off the plane. So that's effectively the requirements: approved countries, unapproved countries, commercial and non-commercial, and the 5 airports where you can fly in on a commercial flight. There are other ways of obviously bringing pets into the UK. You can come across in a car on the Eurotunnel. You can't currently bring a pet on the Eurostar, which is the passenger service. The Eurotunnel is the one where you drive your vehicle onto the train and come across. There's only support assistance animals that are allowed onto the Eurostar, the passenger one. And there are obviously ferries that come into the UK from various ports around Europe. But predominantly they'll come in as manifest cargo on a commercial flight from various points around the world. Please also note that not all airlines are approved to carry pets into all airports. So they have to apply for approval by specific destination. So don't all automatically assume that your local airline can carry pets into the UK. They have to be on the approved list. Finally, I'm just going to talk very briefly about VAT. Now, I'm not financially qualified. We are not regulated by the FCS, so I can't talk about values and prices or any of that kind of stuff. I just want to talk about who has to pay VAT, who may be exempt, etc. If we get lots of questions about, well, I'm a UK citizen, I'm returning to the UK, I've got this pet, surely I don't have to pay VAT. Well, as long as you can demonstrate that you have exported that pet from the UK, and that's with either an endorsed health certificate or an airway bill that is dated within 3 years of your arrival back into the UK, then you'll be exempt VAT. If not, if you've acquired a pet while you've been working overseas, been travelling or whatever, then you are required to pay the VAT. Diplomats are not exempt, unfortunately. Military forces are not exempt. Everybody has to pay the VAT. Now, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs take a very practical view on how you value a pet. So it's not a vast amount of money generally. If you're buying a puppy or a kitten overseas and bringing it in, then you will be required to pay VAT at 20% on the value of the pet that you've paid for and the value of the freight to get here. So that becomes significantly more. There are other exemptions, and that's temporary entry, students, and 1 or 2 others. Anybody that's bringing a pet in, it's just like you're bringing anything else in. So if you're bringing your household goods or a car, pets are treated in exactly the same way. So if you bring anything into the UK, we recommend that you apply for a transfer of residency number from HMRC, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. We can, again, advise on this, send you links on how to apply. It's a fairly easy process, and they will send you back a reference number, 5-6 digits long, and as long as you have one of those, then you don't need to pay any VAT. Now, we do have circumstances where people arrive, they've applied but not received the reference number, so they have to pay the VAT on arrival, but there then is a process where you can reclaim the actual VAT part of the payment after your arrival. So we can help with that as well. So in a nutshell, that's it for UK imports. If you have any queries about whether your country is approved or unapproved, please get in touch. We can talk you through the whole process, help you with the paperwork, take care of the customs clearance, and deliver your pet anywhere in the UK. Thanks for watching. See you next time.